Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. As you know, today is a Wednesday, and as usual, Wednesdays we usually have live show where we have our guest. Today, we are very lucky to be having our guest, Mr. Raphael Akeo, a researcher. He will introduce himself. Let me leave that part to him. So, Mr. Raphael, kindly please introduce yourself to our viewers before we go to the topic of today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Ben, for inviting me to this show today, the 19th of July, 2023. My name is Raphael Juma Akeo. I'm a research and public policy specialist, and I'm also trained in political science. So I'm glad to be here to share with our viewers the topic that is on our screens now, the socio-economic and political emancipation of the youth in Kenya. And I'm glad that this topic comes at this time in Kenya.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Raphael. Without wasting too much time, I think you're aware right now at home, right now in Kenya, the demonstration has been going on, and especially the youths are so much involved. And I think maybe if a chance is given, you can also touch on that. So before we go far, we can go and look at the, the challenges. What are the social challenges that the youth face in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Brother Ben. Before we move to that, it would be an injustice for us to discuss Kenya and to discuss the youth without touching on the contemporary happenings, especially in which the youth are central.
Mhm.
So, if you look at, uh, uh, we are concerned because the current demonstrations that are going on, the political demonstrations that are going on, uh, the political struggles that the country has been facing. I call them political struggles because if you look at the history of political demonstrations in the country, then apart from the colonial independence, pre-independence struggles where the youth were little seen, we started seeing the involvement of the youth to a greater scale during the clamor for multipartyism in the late 1980s and early 1990s, where the several groups of youths came together and championed for multipartyism that came into force in 1992. Any other youth can mention a few who, during that time, their days, they took center stage in trying to fight for multipartyism. Then in the recent times, we also talk about the second and third liberations, the clamor for changes, constitutional changes, and the continuous demonstrations where the youth have been involved greatly. Now, today, the question is why the youth? Why is it that the youth are very central in any meaningful and strategically organized activity, either by the state or non state actors? So even if you look at it both socially, economically, and politically, whenever there is a focus on the state or non-state actors trying to achieve any meaningful outcome in the society, then some of the population, the category of the population that they focus on is the youth. Look at the political campaigns and look at the recent ones, Kenya Kwanza and Azimio talking about their manifestos, a greater part of their manifestos focusing on the youth. You remember the Kenya Kwanza talking about, bottom-up economic model in which the focus was on the lower cadre of the unemployed youth, youth who are not gainfully engaged, and where they coined up the issues to do with wheelbarrows and things like that, focusing on the jobless youth and how they can give them meaning life. Now, if you look at the previous government of President Kenyatta and tracing it back to the Kibaki regime, when they came up with the Vision 2030, the focus of Vision 2030 was actually embedded on the strength of the youth. If you look at the idea around Silicon Savannah, which was there, the Technopolis that they are talking about, for example, the Konza, they are talking about technology driven communities where the youth are the focus to drive these technological changes. Now, even today, if you look at the demonstrations that are going on, the focus is on the youth. Yesterday and a few days ago, you've seen clips doing rounds of youths arming themselves and organizing themselves to be able to sound, to be able to make impact, whichever way, either positive or negative, out of these demonstrations. Then it begs the question: why the youth? Why is the youth being central in every activity of any state or non-state actor? So then we view the answer lies in the vulnerability of the youth. The youth is a vulnerable section of the population. The youth is highly vulnerable today in the society today. And politics operates the same way religion operates. Politics will not focus on the well-to-do in the society. Politics will always focus on the vulnerable sectors of the population. And that is why you will see rallies being held in Jacaranda and Konene, and not in Milimani, Mudaiga, and Karen. Same to religion. You will never see crusades being held in Karen or Mudaiga or Milimani, but they will be held in Baspas and Kasarani and somewhere else because they both focus on the vulnerability of the population. What is it that the population lacks? Which segment of the population lacks too much? Where can they be met? At what point can they be touched? And so yesterday and the days before preceding these demonstrations, you've seen the youth being organized to make impact, whether negative or negative, whether negative or positive, in a way, out of these demonstrations. So that is why this topic is timely, because the question is, what makes the youth vulnerable? Why is the youth the focus of any ill or good intentioned activities or objectives of the government or non-state actors or the political actors or economic actors? Why? What makes the youth vulnerable? Then we therefore talk about, uh, when we say the youth is vulnerable, which means the youth is tied, the youth is challenged, the youth is constrained, he is chained, he has so many shackles upon him. He needs to be freed. We need to emancipate the youth. We need to let him free. We need to liberate the youth, whether in action, in thought, you know, or policy related activities. So then when you came up with this topic and I shared with my friends, then some of them told me that, you would have listened to this topic, but we are challenged by the word emancipation. So it's important that we unpack this word, so that our people get to know that when we talk about emancipation, because we are talking about, I know there's a population of our, society which clearly understands this, but since we're talking about the youth, in a previous segment of this channel, you had talked about who the youth is, and I don't want to go back to that, but it's important that we remind ourselves that the youth is anybody who is under 35. So it will not be so wrong if we remind ourselves of what emancipation is, because we are dealing with sometimes a population which even is under 15 and the rest. And some of them lately have seen clips of politicians carrying their kids to demonstrations around. So we will be right to say that even kids are involved when we talk about the youth. So to emancipate is just to liberate, because we know the youth has challenges. To let him free, to let him, shed off all the shackles that are tying him, the chains that are tying the youth. challenges that the youth have. And so the question that you posed, that what are the socio-economic, I mean, what are the social challenges that the youth face in the society today? Now, before we go to these challenges, that just shows you that the youth have problems,
Mm-hmm.
so they need solutions. And if we give them solutions, we shall have liberated them. We shall have set them free. So some of the challenges, before I go to the nitty-gritties of the challenges that we have, which I will categorize into social challenges, economic challenges, and political challenges, I want to give our viewers some interesting facts, some very interesting facts about the youth population in Kenya. So a study was conducted by a reputable research institution in Kenya, and it was found that, of course, we know that the youth is anybody below 35 years. But the study found that the median age, for some of us who know median, mean, and things like that, average age of the youth in Kenya today, the average age, we know the age of the youth is between, I mean, anybody under below 35 years. But the median age, people whose median age, 19 years, makes 80% of the population. Previously, this is statistic that has been misquoted by, in various circles, people saying the youth is not as many as they think. Some of them say the youth is slightly above 50%. Some of them say the youth is this. No, there's the general population of the youth as and also the gainful population of the youth.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, that's why I come up with the term median. It's the
Mm-hmm.
method of 19 when we're talking about 80%. This comprises of gainful
Mm-hmm.
and those who are not in any gainful engagement. So let us talk about how the youth identify themselves in Kenya today. So the study found that the youth in Kenya identify themselves first as Kenyans, which is a very promising uh, finding. It's a very promising aspect of our population because where we are coming from, we understand from, I will talk about 1992, but let me talk about 1997, where the political negative aspect of politics has had profound impact on our societies.
Mm-hmm.
We noticed that in 1997 and the subsequent years, including 2002, 2007, and the recent years, especially electoral years. I know people who this topic is very emotive to because of the impact such periods had on their life. I will give an example of the former nominated Senator Isaac Bugi, who was my classmate, whose family was forced to move from Nakuru, Elbagon, to Kenyatta and settle there, despite the fact that their ancestral home was from Elbagon. This this is information which is in public domain, and so I know he will not have any issues me sharing that, and many others. And that was in 1997. Then we had the skirmishes of 2007. So the aspect of Kenyans identifying themselves as Kenyans is what I'm talking about here. And so if the youth, if this study found that the youth identifies themselves first as Kenyans, then that is a promising and a very important, you know, variable that needs to be tapped on so that we can build a nation. Nations are not built of tribes. Nations are not built of people. Nations are built by common identities. And so, first, we identify ourselves as Kenyan. That is very important. So, first, the study finds that first, youths in Kenya identify themselves as Kenyans, and then by faith and tribe. Tribe comes last, third in that list, not last. Faith, that I will also give a pessimistic aspect, view or analysis, because for me, it has also had mixed impact on our population. Today, we are struggling with the Shakahola impact on our society because of faith. We have had to struggle with the impact of violent extremisms, which has impacted negatively greatly on our youth. It was believed to be in the coast, but it has nowadays gone deep down in Western Kenya and up to Turkana, you know, and up to Northeastern, down to everywhere. So youths are nowadays being violently, extremely indoctrinated along the lines of faith, which is a very negative perception for me. And so, if the youth identifies themselves second using the variable of faith, then it is something to worry about. I will give you an example.
Okay, before you continue, let
Yes.
me just ask you a question. You talk about the faith, especially for the youth, and do you think the faith is kind of like a place whereby is promising them a good living, so they will always go there, so that when they are told to do even some of the extremist things, they will do in the view that in the near future, or at some point in my life, I will have a good living, a life that I desire.
Yeah, definitely. Because faith, basic definition is belief in uh, unimaginable, superiority. Imaginable superiority. And so there is belief in good promises, meaning promises of good, promises of either good life. As we all know, we grow up to know that heaven is good. And so if you promise, if you do this, you go to heaven. If you do this, you will be in good books with your faith and the leadership and things like that. That is what drives people to faith. And especially what I talked about when you were starting, the vulnerability. When you're vulnerable, when you have a problem and you are seeking for a solution, then you can go anywhere. So somebody promises you a solution out of faith, then you will go there. For example, what happened in Shakahola? Those people were vulnerable. Some of them had mental issues or psychological issues or physical problems like the need or lack of food or lack of clothing or basic needs, and so they are promised heaven on earth, or they are promised to go there and get whatever they lack in their life out of that fasting or whatever they did there. That is what faith did for them. But what I wanted to give you examples of how it impacted on the youth. I took some two examples of youths from CIA who dropped out of Vasili University, according to the story told by their dad, who lives in CIA, and said that they dropped out of Masinde Muliro University and moved to Shakahola because there were some promises of good life out of the faith and not education. So education was not any better. They perished. And many other people who have been indoctrinated violently, extremely indoctrinated and sent into war and suicide and things like that. So that's why I'm saying faith can be good, because for me, there's one aspect that I always uphold, that if it makes you to cordially live amongst your people, to peacefully coexist, that is what is intended. To a greater extent, faith has been able to make people cordially and peacefully coexist. To an extent that you see somebody who was condemned as a drunkard, condemned as, leaving his ways and turning to God, to Allah, and living a good life amongst his peers. To that extent, faith is a plus. But the recent developments is something to worry about. So let's put that aside and talk about tribe, which is the third aspect, which is also very worrying. A third element in which youths identify. So that is an interesting fact that I wanted to share with our viewers to know when we talk about the youth, it's not just the age limit. It's also about how do we identify ourselves? Who are we? What is our identity? And that is what the youth in Kenya is. Kenyan, for example, Kenyan, Christian, uh, Digu, Kenyan, Muslim, Luo, Kenyan, Muslim, you know, other tribes, Okana, something like that. So that is something to worry about. The first one is something to praise and encourage. The second one should be molded. The third should be worked on. That is one fact I wanted us to discuss, which is interesting. And the second one is integrity. These are issues that lead into the challenges we're talking about. So the youth there, in the first aspect, you realize that the youth has a challenge of identity challenges, which needs to be addressed. Three aspects. One needs to be encouraged, the second one needs to be molded, and the third needs to be worked on. Now, the other social issue, social challenge that is facing the youth today is the challenge of integrity. Integrity is a great challenge to the youth in our society today. And I want to talk about this objectively. Now, this is a study found that 50% of the youth in Kenya believe that it does not matter how one makes money as long as one does not end up in jail. I think that is something that we need to read like 100 times. That half the population of the youth in Kenya believe that it doesn't matter how you make money as long as you do not end up in jail. Now, 47% of the youth admire those who make money through hook or crook, including hustling. And to this extent, I will also blame our leaders because you cannot be an example in leadership and your direction, I mean, your history and how you have gotten there is all very clear to the youth. People need to know you that this is what you did. For us to aspire to be you, we need to know how you made it where you are so that we can also follow your footsteps. 30% of the youth believe that corruption is profitable in Kenya. That corruption is profitable. This is something that anybody would believe. Believing does not mean you ascribe to it. That corruption is profitable in Kenya.
Let me follow up again on how the youth believe, because a society is a reflection of the leaders they have. If you have
Mm-hmm.
good leadership, it will reflect on a society. So the integrity part of our youth is based on what our leaders are, because in the major political landscape of Kenya, especially when we are going for election or somebody want to vie for an elective uh, seat, there's chapter 6 of our constitution. It outlines who should, but you find in Kenya, even those who are not supposed to vie, based on maybe they have some criminal history or they have a court case that they should kind of like litigate and finish before vying for political office, they do vie. Then another thing that happens when you see at their life, you find somebody just became a member of parliament, and the lavish life that he lives, and you wonder how comes that they make so much money. So does it mean that this is what is influencing the youth too?
Thank you for bringing that up, because uh, let me finish with these statistics then, because it's a very elaborate
Okay, no
discussion
problem.
I want to have with you on that.
Okay.
Now, I was saying that 73% are afraid to stand up for what is right for fear of retribution. 73%. That's a huge number. Almost the entire population of the youth cannot say this is wrong, this is right, for fear of retribution. They cannot say no. Then 40% strongly believe that it is important to pay taxes. And 35% of the youth will readily take or give a bribe. 40% believe that it's important to pay taxes, which means more than half do not care whether they pay taxes or not. I'm sure most of our viewers here have not filed their taxes for the last financial year, which ended last month. I'm sure.
June.
Now, now, I'm saying I'm sure they have not filed taxes. You know, that's a responsibility of any citizen. But let us uh, what do we learn from these statistics about integrity? For me, this presents very serious, serious moral drain amongst the youth. Admiration of who can cook and criminals and socialized, wise men, pap, mugos. In my local language, we call them pap and mugos. Mugo, Mugo, I want to explain the concept of Mugo and the wise man. These concepts were acquired by university students to describe those who have money and the wheeler dealers in the society whose sources of wealth and money are not known. But they are the ones who are in charge of the tenders in the government. They're the ones who are in charge of, deals in the society and can get you whatever you want. Now, leadership today, we can, even if you go to social media, you will find people following our political leaders to a near fanatical religious following, not just political leaders, even socialites. But when the question of their wealth is put across, then you can never have objective discussions about their sources. What you will get are insults and subjective views, which cannot inspire. But when you want to have candid discussion of how somebody made whatever they have as their wealth, the youth is not ready to listen to that. The youth believes that what they need is the money, provided that it doesn't get them to jail. But not they don't care about how somebody got it. And so you brought up the issue of leaders vying, even when, according to you, the provisions of chapter 6 may be clearly against their character and personalities. I want to tell you that I've been in a political setup, worked with politicians, I've been part of political campaigns, I've assisted politicians to go through the clearance processes and things like that at various levels. And I want to assure you that the implementation of chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya, for me, I will give it almost a 0%. The status of its implementation. The law, as lawyers say, is very clear. And the intention, which is the letter and spirit of the law, is very clear. The spirit of the law was to weed through the society and ensure that those who are put up for leadership positions can inspire in terms of leadership qualities, which includes integrity, honesty, and others, transparency, and things like that. So that when you see that Brother Ben is my leader, then you see chapter 6 in him in terms of the qualities of a leader or the values of our society. You know, even if you look at, because chapter 6 includes Article 235 and Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya on the principles of public service and the principles of governance. Now, let us look at the principles of public service. Even in our appointment, when you see people who are recruited for public engagements, some of them, I'm not saying all, but it begs the question whether a clear mechanism of verifying their suitability with regards to Chapter 6 was undertaken. In terms of political positions, I can assure you that people always fail. For example, the documents that is required in line with Chapter 6 is the clearance with the EACC, which this is how it happens. You go to EACC, you pick a form, or you can download it. You fill the form, you take it to an advocate or to court. It is stamped without any hindrances, stamped at 500 shillings, and then you take it back to EACC. You take a copy to EACC, a copy to IEBC for clearance. That's done. So IEBC will only ask you, do you have the form from EACC? Yes. Is it stamped? Yes. It ends there. Well, EACC says that they will use that form to do a background check on you and submit to IEBC. By the time IEBC is clearing you, because those things you take them today and you get there with a clearance, or if people are so many, maybe tomorrow or a few days. By the time EACC conducts that investigations and finishes, you're already an MP. You're already an MCA. Huh? Which other clearance certificate is important? Nothing. It is EACC which is supposed to check your background and advise the people or the electoral body that this person has the following pending cases and things like that against him, and so he should not be allowed. The last time EACC tried to do some good job, it was politically motivated, and people demonstrated that it did not see the light of day.
So, so, so now let me ask you, how are we going to kind of like grow as a country that is very, very, very clear of what they're doing? If the institution maybe that are been given the powers to do this take too long to get us the answers, or sometimes even you go to the courts and you go to the same courts where you have a case that you've not litigated and finished it, and it is still there, they still go ahead and stamp for you. What that one would say about the society that we have, are we going to see a Kenya that we want or a Kenya that we don't want?
Yeah, that is why we need to, because these are moral issues, because we have tried to have them litigated, have them put in law, but it seems not to. We as a country, we seem not to be making headways because they're trying to cut the tree from up, and it keeps sprouting. So then we need to approach it from the roots, and approaching this from the roots means ingraining values into our system. Values is a socialization concept, and so people need to be socialized into what are the moral values that can hold us as a society. And that is why addressing this topic, emancipating the youth, liberating the youth from these challenges is important, though it needs to go even down the populations that are down there. But such talks and such activities that can help the youth view issues with integrity differently, view issues to do with the value system differently when it comes to socio-economic and political activities can help the nation. Now, I was talking about these values, but I don't want to make name names of politicians, leaders, and public figures whose activities may not inspire integrity in the youth, but they are out there. We know them. And that is maybe some of the, I may also be facing the challenges that the youths are facing here. I talked about 73% of the youth not being ready to say no for fear of retribution. So I may be suffering from the same. So I want to talk about some other one here, that 45% of the youth value work first. That is a worrying trend. 45% is very less. If we talked about, that is below average. If we talked, which means not so many youth value work. The youth do not value work. And why? We should ask ourselves, why does the youth not value work? That's a serious issue because of the concept of hard work and success. The youth do not believe that hard work leads to success. You know that? This study found that amongst the youth in Kenya, the association between hard work and success declines dramatically with the level of education. That the higher the youth is educated, the lower he believes he will succeed, you know, so that 83% of the youth with only primary education believe that they will succeed. The lower educated, they believe they will succeed. Those who are higher educated believe they will not succeed. So that should worry us, because if you go to school and you don't believe you will succeed, which means to some extent, even our education system does not inspire success in our people, in our youth. And so nowadays, if you go to school, people will ask you, even so and so did not go to school, but he's doing well, you know.
Mm.
And but people don't want to know how. They just know he's doing well. They don't want to know how he's doing well. Let's look at the political challenges that the youth have today. Interestingly, and very good for us, that the youth value politics and democracy. They view it positively. And that's why they participate. A good percentage of the youth participate in politics. But what is worrying is that they are vulnerable. Like I say, 62% of the youth are vulnerable to electoral bribery and such. So if they are vulnerable, then the question is, why can the youth mobilize themselves politically? Because we always say that we have the numbers. And true, like we say, the youth make 8% of the population. Those under 35 years, everybody under 35 years, maybe not the age of majority. Are not talking about the age of majority, youth who are the age of majority here, 35%. I mean, 35 years and below, 80%. But still, it is very difficult for us today as a youthful population to mount successful campaigns. It is very difficult for the youth today to get into positions of decision making, positions of policy making in governance. How many of our viewers here can confidently say that in their county, the following amongst the CECs or chief officers or governor or directors are the youth? Very few, because there are several challenges the youth face politically. How many of our youth are in positions of meaningful leadership? How many are MCs? How many are MPs? How many are senators? How many are governors? What are the challenges? Because political mobilization, the reason why the youth cannot mobilize themselves and mount successful political campaigns or successful engagements into positions of decision making is because these activities require a
Mhm.
common agenda, one. Two, they require resources. And three, they require political systems, a functional political system. Now, let me tell you, so at some point, some years back, some scholar joked that it's very difficult and expensive to run a political campaign in Kenya than it is in the US, the United States. And so he was joking that during President Barack Obama's first campaign, people mobilized finances for him in the communities. But in Kenya, how many, the MP from Mias East tried to buy several times, asking people to donate money for him last year, and he could not win. He cannot lie to us today that he won because people donated or because he did not have money. We know how he won. The henchmen of the political system had to support him because he had a population behind him.
And
So,
okay, let me ask you, when you talk about Selassie, and
yeah,
this is something that maybe you can explain to our viewers. So, when you look at the Kenyan youth, even though they might not be having the resources to mobilize themselves, even for run for the leadership, it also means there is a way in which the system does not want to let them, or the system does not want to educate them to run for those offices, because the system, if you have a very good a very intellectual youth who has very good views and manifestos on how they can overcome the challenges that faces the people that they lead, the system will rebel against you. Why is that one happening? Why is the system rebelling?
Politics, like I said, preys on the vulnerable.
Oh.
If you are enlightened and you are liberated and you are able, then who will go on the streets to demonstrate for the henchmen? Who will go around to, paste posters for you, for the henchmen with their campaigning and everything? So a certain segment of the population has to be kept somewhere to keep dancing to the tunes of the henchmen. And again, the political system is designed in a way that it controls the distribution of resources. And that is what politics is. Aristotle said that politics is he who gets what, when, and how. Because resources are scarce in a society. So there has to be a system that distributes it. So that the closer you are to the political system, the more you get. And so some people have to be kept away so that they don't benefit, all of them. So the party structure, one agenda. The youth do not have a youth agenda. In Kenya, there is no youth agenda. Everybody pursues their own agenda. And if there is, we have politicians who are youthful, who have been in positions of leadership. We have people who have been given positions of leadership and governance, decision making, who are youthful. What agenda of the youth have they championed? Such questions, those are debates that can be there. Is there an agenda that they're championing that will be seen to be cross-cutting for all the youth across the country? We talked about resources. They don't have the resources, and that's why they're vulnerable. That's why the historical henchmen of the political system will always capture them and put them in a corner, or capture them and put them in positions of leadership where they can be controlled and told what to do every time they want something done. So they will be sponsored and told what to do, that they've won elections, but they have not won. They have been put there by people. Political system, in Kenya, the political system that we're talking about, the party structures, the legal and policy structures that control the political, systems, that control the political activities, including political party management and the rest. The laws are there, including the laws that provide that youth should be given some concessions and, when it comes to buying, donations, and things like that. But they're never adhered to. So those are the challenges, the political challenges that the youth face today. There is an economic aspect that I want to tell you, that what is the aspiration of the youth? Majority of the Kenyan youth, 48%, not bad, would like to go into business. What are the aspirations of the youth? 48% would like to go into business. 26% wish to pursue careers in several disciplines, including engineering, law, medicine, teaching, and the rest. 11% would wish to go to farming. I chose these three aspects to see what is it that, what sector of the economy, because we're talking about farming, because of its contribution to the SDGs and to our Vision 2030, presidential manifestos, our policy framework generally. The careers that are also contributing to our policy direction as a nation and globally, and then business, which the youth, people have been singing to the youth, don't wait for employment, go into business, go into business. How many of the youth? 40% would wish to go into business, but how possible is that? They have been constrained. Education as a dividend, that 78% of the youth in Kenya today have attained post-primary education. So in order, as part of efforts to liberate the youth, we have put forth, the narrative out there, business, career development, and even farming, as a profitable entity, the business and things like that, which is currently being sold to the youth everywhere. But then 78% of the youth have post-primary education, 39% of the youth have post-secondary education, and 22% have primary education. So majority of the youth in Kenya are educated. And so we have the revisite skills as a youthful segment of the population to jumpstart our own liberation, our own emancipation. So this is very important in terms of kickstarting economic development. When you realize that over half of the population of the youth are not in any gainful employment, are not in any gainful employment, over half, 55%, despite the fact that they are educated like we said before.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are the possible solutions for the youth? Before we go into that, because we have a system that needs to facilitate the youth, system that needs to facilitate the process of emancipation. But is the youth having trust in this system? Because it's the government that needs to push or facilitate, for example, the 48% of the youth who may want to go into business. What is it? What is the policy proposals or solutions that the government has put in place to facilitate youth going to business? For those who want to go into careers, what are the policy proposals that the youth has put, I mean, the government has put in place to facilitate the youth to go into such careers, and how are they absorbed after completion of such particular skills, development? So there's something here that 52% of the youth do not have knowledge of government initiatives that can facilitate them. They don't know that there's anything that the government has put in place that can facilitate them to either go into business, go into careers, or go into agribusiness or agriculture. For example, we have youth fund, we have Wezo fund. These are government initiatives and many others, which have been used as political campaigns and tools with little success. Like we had Kazi kwa Vijana, and now we have that other one,
Hustler fund.
Asla Fund, political tools. But we have the ones which were institutionalized and were given some little policy direction, like Wezo Fund and Youth Fund and the rest. This so we call them marginalization funds.
Mm-hmm.
The youth does not even trust politicians. They don't trust the government. 65% of the youth do not trust the government. But imagine, you know. Now, 67% of the youth have not benefited from government-initiated youth programs. This should worry the people in leadership. There's a
Let
lot of ignorance around facilitative activities and actions of the government that may favor the youth. And this we should also blame ourselves as the youth.
Raf, let me ask
Yeah.
you about when you talk of youths um, not blaming the government, because I want to understand it this way. When somebody an area MP has been elected to represent an area, this member of particular area is who he's in as a state member, yeah. So which means it is in his duty to try and educate or advise the youths that he represents that such like funds are there in the government. How can we how you can assess them, yeah. But you find for some good reason some of the representative are not engaging the youths, even having like things like town halls or barazas whereby they can talk to the youth and tell them this is the best way to go. That is one area. Another one area that you might also witness is that the same representative form an imaginary, like the group that does not exist, and they're the people enjoying this money instead of the youths. That one happens. So how again can we um, tackle that area
Now,
with the youth?
yeah, it's important that our leadership, takes responsibility, because when we talk about ignorance
Yeah.
in terms of available opportunities that the youth may benefit from, then it's a collective responsibility. It's both the initiative of the youth to seek information. It's also both the initiative of the leadership to sensitize the youth and other sectors of the population of the available opportunities. And that has failed. In the part of leadership, I want to tell you that it revolves around corruption and the ill intentions of our leaders. When a leader is elected, the first thing they think about is how to get back the resources they used during campaigns. And we know politics is not a very lucrative venture as people may think in Kenya because it is too expensive to be lucrative. Why it not too expensive? It will be very lucrative. But I can assure you that whatever these politicians get in terms of remuneration compared to the investment they put in place when they were campaigning, they call them investments when they were campaigning, the difference is way huge. And so it requires some sort of an extra hand of what Diego Maradona called the hand of God. We can be dipped into the cookie jar to bring more, to fill in the gap left between the investment and the demands of the people and what they get as regulations. And so they get themselves into dubious tenders, controlling almost 100% of the CDF tenders, controlling almost 50% of the development vote in the county government, development budget, controlling about 50 or over percent of the youth initiatives like the Youth Fund, Wezo Fund, and things like that. Even those who are given appointments to chair boards of that such funds are politicians who use funds to campaign and lost. So when they go there, they want to get money. So corruption bedevils everything, continues to tie and to chain our youth, and even to enclose the opportunities, the doors of opportunities that may have been put in place by the system to facilitate the youth. So that, you know, what does the youth want? Begs the question. Because we have cried a lot as the youth. We have been undermined, we have been underrated, we have been left behind, we are not being supported, the youth are suffering. What exactly does the youth of Kenya want? And this is based on a research study by a reputable institution. That what is it that the youth want? It's not hearsay. The youth wants directly employment. 63% of the youth want employment. And finally, the politicians know what the youth want. And so when they're campaigning, they start by saying, we will create 1 million jobs each year. Mhm. We'll create jobs each year. Who are they targeting? They're targeting the youth to vote for them. Lack of access to capital. That is another thing that the youth want. 11%. The politicians know, and so they will say, we'll create more business opportunities. We have given you the Halsa Fund. You can start a business with 500 shillings, and you borrow and you pay again. You can start a business with the other one, Kazi kwa vijana, money. They're giving you cash transfer. Another one is there's lack of business opportunities. Of course, there's lack of capital. The youth needs capital to start business. So they say, we'll give you capital through Asla Fund. We'll revamp the youth fund, the ways of fund. You can take loans. While the loans, later on, now the loans, the interest rates are not favorable to the youth. Now, business opportunities, lack of business opportunities. This, you can blame the government, but for me, I don't think if you blame the government, having a business idea, is an opportunity for you. You can blame the government for capital or something, but lack of business opportunities, support process, being innovative, being open-minded, you know. Then issues to do with discrimination and non-recognition. It's lower in the rank, yes, but the youth feel discriminated. For example, ask around, through a survey you can, ask your viewers that in their counties, like I asked before, how many of the youthful population have been given positions of decision making? I was very happy last 2 weeks when I noticed that Migori County government just appointed my friend David Ochola, engineer, in whom we were campus. to be the chair of the County Public Service Board, who is youthful. Very laudable appointment. If not forgetting the other political appointments that we have witnessed before. President Uhuru appointed like Logi and others, Even the current government has appointed a number of youths into positions of leadership, you know. But that is not enough because the youth still feel discriminated. They feel like a drop in the ocean. Most of them are out there, qualified, like I've demonstrated before, that 73% of the youth have the requisite education. And again, this is the most educated population we have ever had in terms of the youth. So that is what the youth wants. So how do we, unchain the youth? How do we emancipate the youth? What options are there for the youth? So we have social options. The youth need to mobilize themselves because political mobilization has been a problem. Let us go into social mobilization. Let us mobilize ourselves around community-based organizations and tackle the challenges of our communities. Let us mobilize ourselves through non-governmental organizations, self-help groups. But about the people in your base, they should ask themselves, what do they do when so what do they do when they have money in the bank? They pride themselves on having huge sums of money. I was very encouraged by a Boda group in Nyeri, which bought a piece of land and started constructing real estate. Very important. It's possible. Several Boda groups can buy matatus and get into transport industries, businesses, and things like that. Several groups, not just Boda, even in the normal merry-go-round business, initiatives that we have. Social enterprises. When you have a CBO, an NGO, you can do something on the side, like the business and the rest, that can bring money. The NGO, the CBO, so that they are self-sustaining. Education and skills advancement. I want to talk about this, tying it to economic development, issues, skills development. Recently, the government of Germany came to Kenya and announced that they have a lot of skills that they require from Kenya. But most of our people do not have direct skills. We view the direct skills as not very good for uneducated youth. Plumbing, electrical works, electrical wireman, mechanical, and things like this. The problem is the way in which our Juakali sector has been abandoned. Did you know that Kisumu Juakali sector is the largest one Juakali area in Africa? But you see, it is abandoned there, not fenced, with the periodic fires. Look at the fires in the Komba every year while they are making world-class Juakali items. Why aren't our Juakali artisans certified by the government? While they attract and take in trainees from government institutions for practicals, but themselves they don't have certificates and they're not even regulated. The government needs to regulate the locality sector in a manner that can give certifications to what they do there and the skills they have, so that their skills can be exported out there to benefit. Now, I talked about governance severally. I don't want to repeat because of time. The other issue that I want us to look at as the youth, social media, the power of the social media. If you go out there, most of our people, our social media people in Kenya are following socialites and people who are living in different worlds than what their realities are. But the youth out there, go to Nigeria, what you see in social media are comedies and pranks which bring a lot of money to them.
Mhm.
If you go to even tech, nowadays. You go in what you see in reels and TikToks are what people sharing text, how you can hack very simple hacks on the computer, very simple data analysis, methods on the computer, very simple, uh, very simple tools, how to use very simple software tools in a computer. And they get a lot, how to do online gigs. What online gigs do you have? Things like that. You stream the streets of Nairobi over the weekend, you see youth taking pictures, to imitate socialites and celebrities instead of creating real content. Because Kenya is highly ranked in terms of social media usage, content creation, but the content is not generating enough commensurate revenue as it can. So let us use the power of social media to emancipate them. I don't want to talk about public participation because it is not meaningful, according to me. It's not meaningful. And so it's not involving, it's not addressing the issues of the youth. It's there in law and it's done as a matter of compliance. The
Yeah.
law requires, but it's not done because it will emancipate the youth in any way. So, brother Ben, of course, politics is there, but in order to completely emancipate ourselves as the youthful population, we
Mhm.
need skills, we need learning and knowledge, and we need the ability to grow. We need experience, competence, and training. So any youth can take up on his niche. If you got a skill that you need to develop, go online and check. For example, if you're doing welding, go online and check how you can advance. Go online and check how you can advance the data analysis skills. Go online and check how you can analyze, advance your plumbing skills and things like that. And you will increase your knowledge, you'll have enough experience and the skills that is there, and to you'll be able to liberate yourself and be able to face the society head on.
Okay, before even we wind up, there are people, some of our viewers who are watching us, so we need to say thank you for them, Mr. Victor Obedi, Vivian Sharon, General Isa Madenge, we have Steve Okal. We thank you very much for taking your time to be with us in this show. And maybe before we end on just current issue that is going on right now about the protest. And I still believe one thing, that the opposition has a right to demand what they're demanding. The government also has the right to demand what they're demanding. But do you think it can reach a point whereby the opposition and the government come together so people can negotiate? Because the high cost of living is not selective. It's not only higher on the Azimio side and lower on the Kenya Kwanza side. It's cutting across the Kenyan. It's a Kenyan issue. Do you think the government and the opposition can just come and have a dialogue and reason together for the sake of the country, so that so we can move on? Or what do you think, as somebody who has studied politics? What do you think?
Yeah, it's important that the two sides reason together. The possibility of the same is what we should talk about. But
Mhm,
again, what I know is that it will happen. It's just a matter of time. It will happen. They reason together, and most likely they are already reasoning together. Most likely behind the scenes.
mhm,
What I know is that the demonstrations is a tool to put the government on check. That is why the drafters of the constitution saw it good to put it there. It's a tool of any democratic setup to put the government in check, especially when the legal systems of oversight have been overrode or have been taken over by the system itself. For example, our system today, our parliament, both at the local and national level, has been taken over by political undertones to an extent that they cannot objectively undertake their oversight duties. And so sometimes demonstrations comes in to complement.
mhm,
Going back to the issue of why now, at this moment, is demonstrations uh, going on. The issue for me is not about the high cost of living. I don't want to sound to be, subjective here, but objectively speaking, as a political analyst, I will tell you that the issue is not always about the people.
mhm,
It's not always about the interest of the people. It's always about the interest of those who are in power and those who need power. Because if you trace the genesis of the current standoff, then it's emanated from the declaration of the election results, how the questions around how the current government came into being and how the opposition came into being. how somebody won and how somebody lost. And so people are disgruntled and they need to remain, I don't want to say relevant, but they need to remain, relevant and also to remain in charge. You know, the government needs to remain in charge and the opposition needs to be opposition and not to be killed, not to go into oblivion. And so issues economy, for me, would have been there even if the opposition won. Because as at the point that we were going into elections, life was already unbearable. And I remember the calls for the subsidies that was going on, the abolition of the subsidies and things like that. They made very little impact and they were unsustainable. So it was foreseen that anybody who would have taken over leadership was going to take over an economy which was not doing well. And this is the part of global factors that are contributing to the bad economy, yes. But we are also alive to the fact that there's a lot of mismanagement and mismanagement, misprioritization by the current government that has driven the economy even down deep down into the drain. Maybe that is the aspect that alternative leadership could have saved the country from, because we know the high levels of corruption.
Mhm.
We know high levels of government government expenditure in terms of even appointments and official expenditure by the executive and those in positions of leadership, which are uncalled for. You know, recently the government declared the C position of the CAS is legal, which they tripled. It was in the previous regime, but it was even added more numbers. It put a lot of drain on the economy. So, such are some examples of the decisions that the current regime has taken that has driven the economy deep down the drain. Issues, global economic, issues, macroeconomic issues notwithstanding, those would have been there even without alternative leadership. So for me, the demonstrations will not be a solution, but is a means to both parties. Eventually, they have to sit down and talk. Reason why they have to sit down and talk, the government must not be seen by the international community as an unstable government. And the country must not be seen as a banana republic, as it is already. International players already issuing travel advisories saying Kenya is unstable. They understand very many flights were cancelled, a lot of goods that were coming in delayed, millions of shillings will be lost in terms of business. That cannot happen. The international community cannot allow that. And they will push the government to sit down with the opposition, they push the opposition, listen, sit with the government, and concede. So we must expect a concession very soon. However, the reason why demonstration has taken some serious momentum lately is because the government was playing big man syndrome and has been playing, a hardliner position. And so the position, knowing this game so well, they have to push harder. And 2 weeks of this harder will put the government down and people will talk. And so we know as Kenyans, we know our history, we know people will talk. Most probably next week, and most probably next week. If it delays too much, I know next week or the week after, most likely next week people will talk and things will cool down
Okay.
to their businesses.
Okay, my guest, thank you very much for taking your time to at least assist us understand all this about the youths. And what also I would like to advise or kind of like appeal to our brothers and sisters on both sides. We just only have one Kenya. There's no any other Kenya that we have apart from the Kenya we have. So it is us to build Kenya and to see Kenya that we want. I know politics sometimes usually take a center stage, but at the end of the day, it is Kenya for us.
And
So
our youth, Brother Ben, must realize
yeah.
that political activities, whether demonstrations, elections,
Yeah.
is not about them, it's about the politician. And so we must always be very cautious whenever we engage,
Hmm.
not to allow us to be too much involved to lose our focus and
Hmm.
lose our unity and
Hmm.
lose our ability to identify ourselves as Kenya first.
Okay, thank you very much. To people, to some of our viewers who are new here, this is a home for you. You can find time and give us your subscription, so you will always find us when we upload video like this. To our guest, thank you very much, and I will continue to engage you. And if I have another topic that I feel we should share with the Kenya public, I will always reach out to you. And thank you for your time, and may God bless you. And thank you so much to our viewers. Let's meet again on Wednesday, same time, same place. Thank you very much, and you have a good night.